After the 2012 killing of Trayvon Martin, three black women, Alicia Garza, Opal Tometi, and our guest this segment, Patrisse Cullors, formed what has since become the global phenomenon of Black Lives Matter. Patrisse Cullors is an artist, organizer, and freedom fighter. She is also founder of Dignity and Power Now, and she has worked tirelessly promoting law enforcement accountability and continues to as my main man, Peace Justice Universal, AKA DJ U-Rock, AKA Pedro used to say, upset the setup. Patrisse Cullors, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You know, some people, including, you know, we have a number of people have reached out, including political prisoner Jalil Muntaqim, who is written from behind the prison walls, trying to reach out to Black Lives Matter activists and others. And one of the critiques that he shared, a loving critique, as I would want to point out, by the way, is that he was concerned, or is concerned, that that there's a lack of perhaps ideological direction in Black Lives Matter that would allow it to be to fizzle out, in, as he said, in comparison to Occupy Wall Street. As you are advanced in your own organization, as you all are headed to Cleveland to participate in this Black Lives Movement conference, how do you respond to that particular critique? Again, a loving critique from an elder of the struggle that some others share, that I've even shared as well, to be frank, as a concern about, in part because of the co-optation and the appropriation, that a more clear ideological structuring might be of some value here. But how do you respond to those kinds of, again, loving criticisms?
I think that the criticism is helpful. I also think that it might, I think of a lot of things. The first thing I think is that we actually do have an ideological frame. Myself and Alicia in particular are trained organizers. We are trained Marxists. We are super versed on sort of ideological theories. And I think that what we really try to do is build a movement that could be utilized by many, many Black folk. We don't necessarily want to be the vanguard of this movement. I think we've tried to put out a political frame that's about centering who we think are the most vulnerable amongst the Black community to really fight for all of our lives. And I do think that we have some clear direction around where we want to take this movement. I don't believe it's going to fizzle out. It just gets stronger, and we see it, right? We've seen it after Sandra Bland. We're seeing it now with the interruption of the Netroots Nation Presidential Forum. What I do think, though, is folks, especially folks who've been trained in a particular way, want to hear certain things from us that we're not sort of framing it in the same ways that maybe another generation has. But I think it's important that people know that we are, the Black Lives Matter movement doesn't just live online. Although there's many people who utilize it online, we're in a different set of circumstances, a different generation that social media may feel like it's diluting sort of the larger ideological frame, but I argue that it's not.
No, I think that's very well said, very well taken, understood. And as, you know, speaking for myself, it was just an intent or a desire to encourage that it not fizzle out. So I'm glad to hear you saying that, and I'm happy that that there appears to be much more going on than some of us are aware of, particularly those who are, again, politically incarcerated, as is Jalil Muntaqim. One last question, if I could, real quick. There has been some controversy in some circles over the definition of Black. Could you say a word or two about how you conceive the term Black and what you mean when you say Black Lives Matter?
Black to me is both about a race that's been constructed, but it's also a political statement. It's a political framework. And I think it's important as we are building out this movement for Black liberation that we in the Black Lives Matter movement allow for necessary debate to come up around how we use the term and who's using the term and when it's used, and why it's an important point to sort of build people together. And I think it's specifically important when it comes to how the U.S. is very clever at turning other groups white, right, and making them white. And we've seen that throughout history when groups were not white, and when the white power structure was threatened, they figured out a way to make groups white. And I think as we move forward, we have to figure out political alignments that hold Blackness as a broader framework than just sort of the skin we're in, but as a political statement.
Patrisse Cullors, thank you very much for joining us in this segment of I Mix What I Like for the Real News Network.